I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Invocation by Salvation Army. Not here. Okay. Roll call, please.
Sabers. Rice.
Here.
Dosher. Here. McCardle. Here. Barrington.
Here.
Allen.
Here.
Charks. Here. Smith.
Here. Okay, we have a quorum. We want to make a slight adjustment to the agenda. Items 25 and 26 we want to move to right after item 15, so there will be a 15A. That allows our Public Works Director to go see his young daughter perform or do some event for school, so we're trying to help him get out of here. Thank you. You're welcome, Mr. Schrader. Okay, approval of consent agenda items. Items appearing on the consent agenda may be removed by a city council member for discussion at the beginning of formal agenda items. Is there anything you wish to remove? Discussion?
You just might want to point out there's appointments to some boards on there.
You can. Or you want me to mention? Yeah. Gene Keeler is being reappointed to the Corn Palace Board, and then we have two new appointments, Carol Sorsasimo and Giovanni Lanier. And just for your information, there will be one more coming to you. We've got to find that person yet, though.
Move approval of consent agenda.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Rice, second by Mr. Allen. Further discussion? Is there anybody in the audience wishes to address these items? Roll call vote, please.
Rice.
Aye.
Dosher. Aye. McCardle. Aye. Barrington.
Aye.
Allen.
Aye.
Charks. Aye. Smith.
Aye.
Motion carries. Citizens input. If you need to address the mayor or member of the city council on an item that was not on the agenda, excluding personnel items, please come forward to the podium, state your name and your concern. Presentations are limited to 3 minutes. Items to be considered for no action will be taken. Mr. Bender, come on up.
How we doing, everybody? All right, so the government just droned a bunch of kids, and our leaders are traitors, but let's be distracted by something more important like vaccine mandates. All right, breakthrough cases are no longer rare. They're no longer the exception, but they, regardless of your vaccination status, you will get sick, but maybe just not as sick. All right, but Joe Biden has issued his decree. Businesses with 100 employees or more must mandate the vaccine. Now, who could have seen this coming? I did. A year ago, people told me that the masks, they're just masks. What's the big deal? Well, you give an inch and they'll take a mile. Remember 15 days to flatten the curve? Well, for me, it was only obvious that the extent of these authoritarians would go to take the individual's right to choose. They do it to my fellow Americans in New York. They'll do it here in Mitchell. So here comes OSHA. They tell you to compel people to comply, and you fall in line. You do what you're told. First, you'll give them $200. Next, you'll raise their insurance premiums. Then you'll force them to test every week, and then you'll take their jobs. That's not a choice, that's an ultimatum. If someone refuses, you'll end up taking their livelihood, their health care, their dignity. You'll condemn them to living on the streets and eating out of a dumpster. And you think I'm being melodramatic? Well, just look at California. They don't care if you live in the streets and die like dogs. So somewhere in the U.S., I can't remember exactly where, there was a mayor who said that he'll refuse to comply with Biden's vaccine mandate. So Everson, you could do that if you can muster the courage. They will try to make you comply. For instance, they'll take your monoclonal antibody treatments and let people die just out of spite. So I talked to an city employee recently. I asked him why he didn't want the vaccine. He said it's because the government told him to get it. Now that sounds like a reasonable explanation to warrant an exemption to me. Does that count? Or will it count? Did you know that the Tuskegee experiments lasted 40 years? I think I'll take my chances with natural immunity. Is that going to count? I don't want to be part of this experiment. CDC, NIH, along with mass media, stifled any info on early treatment. Senator Ron Johnson, along with a lot of experts, said that we could have saved as many as 85% of these people with early treatment options. So what happened to saving one life? Where's the outrage? Or does your media source not cover that stuff? With all the adverse reactions to the vaccine, there was a 13-year-old boy in Michigan, supposedly, that died from the vaccine. Where's our sympathy for him? So I'm going to assume that everybody here wants to be forced to be taken. So the chief of police here, Coster, admitted recently that in the Daily Republic that crime was on the rise here in Mitchell. Now, who could have predicted that? You may recall me voicing my concerns about a year ago. So what's next? More inflation, negative interest rates, stagnation, economic collapse, more civil unrest, a civil war or a world war even. Or maybe it's just a war on the unvaxxed. So that war is already here. Authoritarianism is already here, and it's been here for a while. But there will always be resistance to it. So I want to ask what side you guys are on the freedom side or servitude side.
Got to have you wrap it up.
I'm just asking where we going to stand on this mandate, and before we start firing people and see what goes from there. That's it. Thanks, guys.
Thank you. Anybody else wish to address council? Okay. Board of Adjustment, entertain a motion for city council recess, says the Board of Adjustment. Motion by Mr. Rice, second by Mr. McCardle. Further discussion? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carried. Hearing and action on application for Boyd Ryan to table it. Motion by Mr. Rice, second by Mr. Barrington. Further discussion? Anybody in the audience wish to address this one? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carried. Hearing an application for Faith Missionary Church. Faith Missionary Church has applied for variance of the following. West side yard setback is 0 feet versus 3 feet on Lot 3 and east 33 feet of Lot 4, Block 3, Gleason's addition. East side yard setback of 0 feet versus 3 feet on Lot 4 except the east 33 feet and Lot 5 of Block 3 of Gleason's addition. Rear yard setback of 20 feet versus 25 feet on both above parcels. All for an addition of a 38 by 57 foot building crossing parcel lines located at 1025 East 6, legally described as Lot 4 except the east 33 feet and Lot 5 in Block 3 of Gleason's addition, City of Mitchell, Davis County, South Dakota, and Lot 3 and east 33 feet of Lot 4 in Block 3 of Gleason's addition, City of Mitchell, Davis County, South Dakota. Real property zone R4 high density. Mr. Jang, I guess.
Mayor and council, Planning Commission recommended approval of this 6-0 with one absent. It was tabled at the last meeting because different ownerships on the 2 parcels that were there. There is a deed that they have provided, so it's now one owner. It's just going across 2 parcel lines. That's why we have the side yard setback. With the parking portion of it, they're working with Dakota Pro Striping to figure out their parking. They have green space to the east of their facility that they have an agreement with. It's still all under the same entity, so they'll be able to use that for parking as well. There was nobody else that came up in opposition of it since the last time.
Move to approve.
Motion by Mrs. Charts. Second. Second by Mr. Rice. Further discussion?
Just so the distance from the alley and all that stuff, that's,
Yep.
they're okay there?
Yep, the distance from the alley, they're 20 feet there, which does allow for a parking spot. They're not getting any closer than what the existing building was.
is?
It's
Okay.
just extending it out.
Okay. Discussion? Anybody in the audience wish to address this? Okay. All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carried. Hearing an action on application for George Morgan. George Morgan has applied for side yard variance of 0 feet versus 3 feet is required for enclosing an existing non-conforming carport at 414 North Davison Street, legally described Lot 6A, the west half of Lot 5A, Block 30 of Cooley and Guernsey Addition, City of Mitchell, Davis County, South Dakota. Said property is zoned R2.
Planning Commission recommended approval of this 5-1 with one absent, with a condition that if it is approved, the neighbor to the north signs off on the building permit as well, because it's going up, it's actually across their property line. There's an existing carport that goes to the north. They'd like to close that in so that they can have a garage there. Discussion during it was that if this continues further, there's an easement that's already been filed, so any title work moving forward, both of these parcels, or excuse me, houses are up for sale. So title work moving forward will always have that with it, so they know that there's already that easement that's there. It's cleaning up something that happened back in, I believe it was 1982 when the building was actually constructed. The applicants are here if you have any questions for them at all.
Move to approve with the conditions set forth by the planning commission.
Motion by Mr. Allen, second by Mr. Rice. Further discussion? Is there anybody in the audience who wishes to address this? All those for the motion, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carried. Hearing an action on an application for Stacy Natinga. Stacy Natinga has applied for a rear yard variance of 0 feet versus 3 feet is required for construction of a garage addition at 204 West 11th, legally described as Lot 11, Block 29 of Capital Addition. City of Mitchell, Davis County, South Dakota. Said property is zoned R2, single family. Mr. Jennings.
Planning Commission recommended approval of this 5-0 with 1 absent and 1 abstaining. Discussion during this is he's actually going to be 1 foot 4 inches instead of the 0 feet. He found his pins out there, and when putting the addition on, it's going to be the same construction as what's already there. There won't be any overhangs there. The only comment against was Public Works doesn't like to see a 0 foot setback, especially in alleys for maintenance and things like that. He does have the property to the west there. They have an easement between the two. The door will be accessing the new garage from the west side of the new structure. So he won't be parking behind or anything there. Right. The applicant is here if you have any questions for him at all.
Move to approve.
Motion by Mrs. Charks. Second by Mr. Rice. Further discussion? Is there anybody in the audience who wishes to address this one? All those in favor of the motion, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carried. Hearing an action on an application for Brooke Hartman. Brooke Hartman has applied for conditional use permit to operate a family residential daycare center in her home at 317 East 4th, legally described as Lot 2, Block 27, Original Mitchell, City of Mitchell, Davis County, South Dakota. Real property is zoned R2. Jennings.
Planning Commission recommended approval of this 6-0 with 1 absent with the 2 conditions that if the business ceases to exist for 6 months, a new application would have to be filed, and also it's non-transferable as the second condition. She did have an inspection by Fire Marshal Sandoval already. There were no opposition from any of the neighbors when it was noticed in the paper or letters. Applicant is here if you have any questions for her at all.
Move to approve with the conditions.
Second. Motion by Mr. Barrington, second by Mr. Smith. You beat you by a hair. All right. Anybody in the audience wish to address this one? Okay. All those in favor of the motion, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carried. Action to set the date for Board of Adjustment hearing 10-4-21. Jason Bates has applied for a north side yard variance of 0 feet versus 3 feet is required for an addition located at 1112 North Raleigh Street, legally described as Lot 16, Block 4, D.A. Scott's Additions, City of Mitchell, Davis County, South Dakota. Said real property is zoned R2. Cannabis.
Seconded.
Move.
I will quit.
Motion by Mr. Allen. Second by Mr. Barrington, I'm sorry. Did you need to say anything, Mr. Jennings?
No.
All right.
Good.
All right. Further discussion? Anybody in the audience wish to address this? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carried. Reconvene the City Council, entertain a motion for Board of Adjustment to adjourn City Council, reconvene regular session. Motion by Mr. Rice, second by Mr. Barrington. Discussion? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carried. Okay, we're going to move to item 25. Public hearing on state revolving loan fund application to be used on Mitchell water system improvements.
Mr. Mayor,
Schrader.
Mr. Mayor, Council, Joe Schrader, Public Works Director. With that, we will start the public hearing for the Mitchell Water System Improvement Project. The City of Mitchell is seeking funding from the South Dakota Board of Water and Natural Resources for a project consisting of major upgrades to the city's drinking water system. This includes a 2.5 million gallon ground storage tank with associated pump station and chemical feed facility, modifications to the water distribution system to allow us to feed the system from the south rather than the north, and demolition of the Burr Street water tank. The funds could be either a grant from the State Consolidated Water Facilities Construction Program or a loan from the Drinking Water State Revolving Fund. The city is seeking up to $11 million from the Drinking Water SRF program The expected loan term is 30 years at 1.875%. The Board of Water and Natural Resources may forgive all or a portion of the loan principal for the loan. The amount, source of funds, and terms will be determined by the Board of Water and Natural Resources when the application is presented at a scheduled board meeting, which will be in October. The purpose of the public hearing is to discuss the proposed project, the proposed financing, and the source of repayment for the loan. This project will require an increased surcharge rate of $4.50. We already have $3.24 implemented for this, so that $4.50 would be an addition. And with that, we will open it up to any public comment or comment from council. With
The location is South Highway 37 on the land we
Yep.
bought a year ago or whatever.
Correct. Yes.
10 acres along Highway 37 east side, about a mile south of Walmart.
With no further questions, we will now end the public hearing and move into the resolution. Resolution R 2021-66 authorizes City Council to approve and execute an application for financial assistance through the South Dakota Board of Water and Natural Resources. The resolution also designates the mayor to execute and submit the application on behalf of the city and to certify and sign payment requests in the event financial assistance is awarded for the project. Staff recommends approval.
Move to approve.
Motion by Mr. McCardle,
Second.
second by Mr. Crouch. Further discussion?
Question on timing. When would the next surcharge, the difference between the 3, whatever, and 4, wherever we end up, when would that come to us?
We're currently looking at a late winter, early spring, kind of timing with when the project would start is
Okay.
when we would implement that.
And Joe, question please. Did you say a total to finance this thing, the charge would go up $7, 3 of which has already been implemented? So another 4.
Another $4.50.
So not, Steve, not another dollar on top of the 3. Okay.
Yep.
So would the Burr Street water tower come down last after?
Yep. That'll be the last of the project.
Okay.
Anything else? Anybody in the audience wish to address this? Okay, all those in favor of the motion, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carried. All right, that's item 16. Action to approve streetlight request for Lake Ridge Addition Phase 1 by Ethan Clough Lumber.
Mr. Mayor, Council, Joe Schrader, Public Works Director. Ethan Lumber, you can see on the screen there, they show their master plan for their street light layout. They are asking for street lights 1, 2, and 3, which basically gives lighting to their the lot, which they plan to have their first spec house on. I spoke with Mr. Bamer earlier today. Lights are probably going to wait until the spring to be installed, because that will coincide better with the construction of their first spec home. Council does recommend approval. It's at no cost to the city. Once they are installed, then we will just consume the monthly rate.
Based on the map at Future Point, they'll come back and ask for 4, 5, and 6?
Correct.
Move to approve.
Motion by Mr. Smith,
Second?
second by Mr. McCardle. Further discussion? Is there anybody in the audience wishes to address this? All those in favor of the motion, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carried. Hearing an action to approve Agreement A 2021-53 and land exchange on North Harmon Drive. Mr. Johnson.
All right, we briefly discussed this last time. Essentially, it's a cleanup on North Herman Drive where they were straightening out the lot lines there. As you can see on the exhibit, when they did that back in the early 90s, it created 3 lots. Lots 1 and 3 would have been owned by the private landowner. Lot 2 would have been owned by the city. So we'll just be swapping ownership of those between the city and the private landowner.
Move to approve.
Second.
Motion by Mrs. Chark, second by Mr. Merritt. Further discussion? Anybody in the audience wish to address this? Those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carried. Hearing an action to approve Agreement A 2021-54, lease of a portion of 5951 Airport Road property. This is the area we are proposing to possibly have the rodeo moved to if they cannot come to an agreement with their current landlord. Mr. Johnson, I'll take it from there.
Sure. You have the, yeah, if you want to. Again, we've kind of discussed this one in the past already. This would be a location for the Mitchell Rodeo Foundation to hold future events. It is located north of the soccer fields, just west of the airport. They would be leasing approximately the west 900 feet of that property. Really, it's all open ground. They would make improvements, put their arena out there, the hold events. The lease itself should look familiar. We've used very similar leases on past projects. The proposed term was set at 30 years, and the rental rate was set at $7,500 per year. I do have a couple of changes to walk through. You have that email from earlier this morning too? So when council does act on this, I'll ask you to adopt the agreement with the proposed changes that I'll walk through with you now, as long as I can find them. So starting on page 12, or excuse me, page 7, section 12B, the property insurance. There you go. That section basically is getting changed so that the tenant would be the one acquiring the property insurance. It wouldn't be on the city's policy. Similarly, under E2, we removed the reference to landlord. Can you do the show changes on? Just click there, and there you go. There you can see the parts that were deleted there now. So used to say tenant and landlord. We're taking out the reference to landlord there just because they'll be maintaining ownership of those personal property items. And on page 9, we made the dates consistent between the insurance notification and if there's a breach, there's a 14-day period that would apply for them to fix the defects. We just line those two periods up to both be 14 days. Next page, under the force majeure language, we just kept the first section. The rest of it dealt with rebuilding of a structure that would have been city-owned, so we took all that language out since it's all going to be their items that would end up getting rebuilt. So it all dealt with insurance proceeds and how those would be allocated, so we just removed that. We added language to clarify that they're able to place signage for sponsorship at the arena. We did extend under section 18 the period that they'd have to return the site to pre-lease to the pre-existing conditions. And then I think there was just one typo at the end. We've got an April date listed instead of September at the very end, which didn't get corrected on there, but that'll read September instead of April. I know that Jim Miskimmons is here if you have any questions on the Mitchell Rodeo Foundation side of things. Or if Jim would like to say any words, he's free to come up. I'll turn over the floor.
Good evening, Mayor and the members of the City Council. We're pleased to be here tonight. I have very few comments for you. This particular issue has gotten quite a bit of coverage in local media, and my main comment for the benefit of the council is that what you're contemplating tonight has little or nothing to do with any dispute that the Corn Palace Stampede Rodeo has with its tenant or its landlord. It has everything to do with the long-term viability of Mitchell's Rodeo. And so in that regard, and in the spirit of cooperation that we've had with working with the mayor and the city attorney, we hope that you will favorably consider adopting and approving this lease. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to try to answer them. Thank you.
Move to approve.
Motion by Mrs. Charles,
Second.
second by Mr. Ricks. Further discussion?
Yeah. Hey, Justin, 30-year lease, how many other areas throughout our community have we done leases that are 30 years?
I guess I'm not sure off the top of my head. I know that we've had some in the 20 and 25-year ranges. I believe that our FBO agreement at the airport for Wright Brothers is probably a 30-year or 25, somewhere in that range. And the hangar lease that we have with them would coincide with that. The other ones that come to mind would be like Dakota Flight Center and the lease that we did with the Chamber for the Northwestern building, but I don't think that those would have been 30-year terms.
Right. And that's, I don't know, that's, I mean, and like I said, it's one of my concerns, I guess, 30 years. I mean, I wish, obviously, I would, not going to get into what's going on with the rodeo by any means, and obviously, I think the location is ideal for what's been happening over the years with tourism and the advertisement that it gets right off Highway 37, but I'm not here to debate that with what's going on with the rodeo committee and things like that. So I totally support the Stampede Rodeo. I'm looking forward to its endeavor in the future, and it keeps on moving forward, and it's because it's a huge asset for our community each year that it takes place. So I definitely wish the best for them. Just one thing I just got a little concerned with is the 30 years. I just think it's a long time for us to wrap up a piece of property or tie it down for future councils and things like that. And maybe it's not that big of a deal. It's just that with not knowing where the future is going to be in 30 years, with the fact of location of the airport that's out there, with the fact that the National Guards is out there, obviously we have a soccer complex facility out there. I just get a little concerned if 30 years is too long, and maybe it's not if the council's thinking that, but I like baby steps better on some things. I like the fact that if it's a lower term, as in years wise, where future councils that we're not tying their hands, that they can renegotiate with Corn Palace Stampede Rodeo if they're still in play, and just give opportunity for a different look down the road than 30 years. I've been sitting here for 15 years, and it's been a long time. It hasn't been too long, but it's been a long time. 30 years, I just think it's too long, but I will support whatever it is because I want to make sure they can keep on moving forward. So.
And just for background, 30 years was the term that was proposed to the city, and we didn't feel that it should be less or more, or we just kind of ran with that number and figured if the council wanted to make a change there, they could. I know Jim is is here if you wanted to have more discussion on that item, but I think they chose that term because they feel that it's going to be successful and they want to have a more permanent home. But if the council's not comfortable with going to that 30-year term, I'm guessing that they'd be open to discussion on that.
And I personally think that whoever may be sitting up here in the future for all 8 of us and the mayor, I don't think anybody would be foolish enough to not work with the rodeo committee on whatever years we'd stipulate today. So if we would proceed someone with a 10 or 15-year commitment, I really, truly don't believe that in the future they'd have any issues because we all know how big of an asset to it is the community. So I would assume that future councils would do that. However, the biggest thing we've always told ourselves, be careful how we tie the hands of future councils as much as anything else. So just want to voice some personal, that I got. But once again, I'm going to be in favor of something. It just questions if it's 30 years or not. So I just wanted to get some opinion for the rest of the council.
So Marty, what would you recommend? I mean, what would you be comfortable with?
Maybe I'll throw something out, Marty, and just,
Yeah, go ahead.
you guys can see it. If it's 30 years, obviously they're going to have quite a commitment to what they're going to build out there. But I do agree with Marty also. I do not like contracts past 10 years, just because, like you said, things change. But one suggestion maybe we can at least discuss is the fact of maybe it's a 10-year lease with 2 10-year options that both parties agree that they would agree to move forward with those 2 different terms of options, and you would still then reach 30 years if that's something that they were comfortable with. But at least there's a pause, and if you need to renegotiate or whatever, but you're still equal the 30 years in the end if you want to do options. And I have no idea, we're catching you guys totally off guard here. So you can either comment tonight or we can table and discuss it in a couple weeks.
Jeff, another consideration, Jeff, is 30 years from now, $7,500 a year might be like $700. I mean, we're saying that's be worth that 30 years from now. And question for you, Justin, you have this contract or lease agreement dated for September of this year. Are we hoping to have this put together and finalized on both sides by September of this year?
Yeah, I guess the September date was just because now we're having the meeting, so.
That's the approval date.
Oh.
Right, so the term would officially start January 1st, and I think their intention would be to be operational for next summer, but I don't want to speak too much for Jim on that.
I guess I got a question. Marty, I thought about the 30 years and the time too, but if I look on page 1 of 17 on term and renewal, it talks about 30-year lease from January 1st to December 31st, tenant mutual agreement, writing the new lease addition, et cetera. All renewal terms of this lease shall be for 1-year terms upon the same provisions and conditions. Shall end at the effective term. The lease shall automatically renew for all renewal terms, which I'm assuming are 31-year terms, and can be, I guess, nullified with written notice from either party 90 days or not more than 365 days. So it's a 30-year lease, but aren't there 31-year renewals?
So the initial term would be the full 30 years. If it goes to
After that,
renewal
it would be
terms, it would,
1-year
yes, it would
renewals?
be 1-year renewals after the initial term.
Yeah. because-
Now, again, that can be changed, but
Then I have concern about 30 years.
Well, and the way that you were interpreting to begin with, then I would think the rodeo committee would have concerns because the fact of every year they got to come back with, can we keep on doing this? So I mean, the 10-year was actually a better compromise, but now that it's.
Their improvements will be quite expensive.
Sure.
Which we wanted to make sure they had a time frame to cover that, really. They also are looking at trying to bring in additional larger events, such as they hope to get on the rotation for, is the national finals high school? High school. Can you guys speak
It would likely be a South Dakota Regional High School event that would bring several numerous participants to the community involving kids in particular.
Okay. So they're looking at increasing some of what they're doing out there as well.
Jeff, can you explain the 10-year options, how that works?
Sure. So basically, it's just exactly the way it's written right here. And we got 3 attorneys in the room, so I don't want to.
Careful how you practice
Yeah,
law.
careful. Yeah.
The bar will be calling you in the morning?
Yeah. So anyway, instead of a 30-year term, it'll be a 10-year term, just as it's written right now. But then there would be 2 10-year options. So then after.
Whose option? Our option or their option?
Both sides, both sides would have the ability to continue. If both parties agree that it's working very well, we're going to continue, and they can agree to another 10 years as an option. And then after that one's over, then you'd have one more.
Kind of almost like an extension.
Correct.
I mean, I just want everybody to know, I think everybody that knows me, I'm a true advocate of the rodeo. I patronize it on a yearly basis and everything else. It was a lot of sport, but I would be looking at no matter what event we'd be talking about here, if it's rodeo or soccer or hockey or tennis or whatever it is, I would still have concerns for my other constituents in our community of a 30-year contract for the future. I just, like I said, I believe any council that will be in position from now to 10 years to 20 years isn't going to fight with the rodeo committee or anything else. They're going to make it happen, but I just think it has to have that right to have that door open in 10 years. I think what Mr. Smith proposed is a good idea, and I still think it gives them a lot of able to move forward and invest heavily in the property out there. Let alone, I'm pretty sure we'll be investing with them some point in time.
Do you have anything to say about that, Mr. Moscone?
Thank you, Mayor and members of the council. That's a pretty significant change that you're proposing. I'd like to share a little bit of information and then make a suggestion based on your discussion to this point. In discussing with the supplier of our steel and aluminum bleachers that are at the current facility that we would anticipate moving based on a successful negotiation of a lease with the city. We are told that the replacement cost of those bleachers today is about $1 million. The other improvements that we have conceived would truly make this a Cadillac of a rodeo facility, one of the very best, hopefully, not only in South Dakota, but in the region. And so in making those types of long-term plans, the length has been very important to us. But I would let you know that just as I think that we've been in the past, it is our intent to continue to be a good partner with the city of Mitchell. So if you were inclined to modify the term, I might make a suggestion, which would be, and this is a little bit off the cuff, but it is consistent with some of your concerns. I would suggest that there be at least 2 10-year periods and that the option would vest almost exclusively with Mitchell Rodeo Foundation to comply with the terms of the agreement, to not be in any breach whatsoever, and so that at an appropriate time, 1 year prior to the expiration of the initial 10-year term, we can notify the city that it's our intent to exercise the option to extend it for another 10-year term. And so that either be exclusively within the power of the foundation staying in compliance with the lease with the city, and then the foundation has that ability to extend that lease. Or that there be some other limited provision that would allow the city to step back in and reopen discussions. I know that I can't draft that for you on the cuff, and I doubt that Mr. Johnson could either. But that, giving us that, at least that 20-year term, would allow us to enter into discussions with some long-term partners. The foundation is going to be a charity. That's something that Corn Palace Stampede Incorporated has never qualified for with the Internal Revenue Service, despite applying for that status 30-some years ago. The foundation is newly formed. It was not formed with this lease in mind. It was formed to create an opportunity for us to partner with some of the bigger foundations and companies. They're willing to be charitable with regard to some of their funds, but only for entities that are charitable and recognized as such. So those are my comments. I would answer any questions or inquiry that you might have. Thank you.
Further discussion?
I mean, I think the thing that I keep coming back to in my mind is, number one, the investment that they're going to be making in order to make this a state-of-the-art facility and to make the rodeo bigger and better, which is hard to imagine than it already is. And I think about the contributions that this event brings to our community and what it builds and the sales tax revenues and all of those things that come to us because of it. I know that around this table there's none of us would ever want to do anything to jeopardize the future of the Stampede Rodeo. So I am inclined, I understand the concerns about the 30 years, but I also feel like it would be hard if I'm in their seat, sitting there thinking, gosh, is it going to be worth investing however much it's going to take to make this facility if in 10 years we may or may not have the opportunity to continue. So I am willing to support the 30-year contract lease.
The one that he just mentioned, 20 and 10, or just the 30?
If they're happy with the 20 and 10, then absolutely, that's fine.
That's what I would too. I would support a 20 and a 10 option at the end. On account of that, if they're looking for corporate sponsors, you got 20 years, and say if there's one out there that wants to give 200 grand on it or 250, I don't think they're going to do it for a 10-year option. I think they'll do more over a longer period of time, and I can see where the rodeo committee is getting their stuff and getting their information and how they're trying to plan this event in case it goes to the north side of the Air soccer fields. But I would support 20 years and an option with 10. But I don't know if you can get that done right tonight, Justin, or would that have to be at a next council date?
If you approve it and you adopt it with that change, we can get the language sorted out, and we can probably have it finalized tomorrow, but it would be under the understanding that it's consistent with the direction council gave tonight.
So right now we have a motion, so if you want to go that route, we would need an amendment to that motion, correct?
Did we? I don't believe we had a motion.
We do have a motion
Did
by
you?
Mrs. Charles,
Okay.
and a second by Mr. Rice.
Mine was for the original, but I'm willing to amend that to the 20 and 10.
So if we've got the motion, and the motion is for the 20-year with a 10-year renewal, plus the other changes that I ran through, I could make those changes, and we can proceed under that direction if the council's comfortable with it.
I mean, frankly, it's not that big of an adjustment. It's not like we're making a major change.
No, I mean, it's not going to be a significant change. Really, you're not going to have to change much language in that two-way at all. You're going to change the numbers, obviously, and then you'll rework the renewal language. So instead of a 1-year renewal, it would be a 10-year renewal. So it's not a significant change.
And the proposal that's on the table is definitely better for my mind than the 30-year that was proposed to begin with. I still question a little bit. I'm not saying I won't support it, but I do question a little bit. Is there, what possibility is going on for the next 2 weeks? Is there Is there something that would be detriment to us holding it up for 2 weeks? And maybe the council doesn't want to do that either. I'm just asking questions. Jim, is there any concern with it being held up for 2 weeks?
We don't have an opinion on that. Leave it to your discretion.
Okay, so gather these motions up.
Yeah.
Right now, we have a motion for the original.
No, I amended.
Now, hold it, though, we don't have a second for that yet, so.
Yeah, we did.
Oh, did you, Danny?
I did second.
It was right.
No,
It was right.
the original. But then she amended it for 2010, and we don't have a second for that yet.
Second that.
You're seconding that? Yes. Okay, so now we have a second for that. You want to move to table it?
Well, we have to vote on that.
Hold on.
We have to vote on that, that's the motion on the floor, right?
Right, so
Yeah, but
we need to
once-
deal with the current motion and then, or have the
Well, but
current motion
If you make that
rescinded.
motion, you're approving it, so then it's not going to be, how are you going to table it?
I get, part of my concern, if there's not an issue with 2 weeks, that is obviously the council discussed a possible different proposal, which was brand-new information for the rodeo committee. Obviously, Jim came back with possibly a proposal that hopefully the rodeo committee will in favor of that for, but he's one of several. I just want to make sure that us two entities are on the same page. Maybe the rest of his group really wants to be gung-ho on the 30 where we need to really discuss that, or maybe it's to the point where we need to listen to the people within our community. Is 30 too long? I just don't want us to make a hastily decision tonight with something as, in my mind, that was a pretty aggressive thought process of what we just did. but-
Change. Well, and we have budget session a week from tonight. Could we possibly put it on that agenda if we decide not to vote on the current motion that's?
Yeah, right now, it looks like we're going to have a short regular meeting anyways to do your second reading on the cannabis ordinance.
There are going to be a number of council people missing that.
We are going to have two people gone.
Next Monday?
Yeah.
Oh.
We have a motion on the table to vote for. I personally am going to, if that one does not pass, I am going to have a motion to table till our next city council meeting, just to make sure the entities of the city and the entities of the state of the Stampede Rodeo are all on the same page and more comfortable in moving forward with such a long-term thing. I mean, in my mind, 2 weeks and 30 years or 20 years, what's 2 weeks?
Okay, so first thing we have is the amendment to the motion, or do we vote on the regular motion?
Here's what I would suggest to try to help clean some of this up. Let's just do a motion on the existing changes before we got into the term tonight. The other red lines that we walked through, let's at least get those adopted. We can do that as a standalone motion, and then we can come back and you can either have more discussion on how you want to proceed, or we could proceed with changing the term then at that time, but at least we'll have those other changes adopted here tonight.
So you could make your original motions to support.
Right, so since Susan made the original motion, we would need Susan to
Rescind her motion?
to amend that motion back to just adopting the original changes proposed tonight. And
Okay.
Got all that?
Okay.
And
So
then-
be it. Well, I'll move to change my motion to adopting the changes that were made. But does that include the time?
that would not include the term discussion, so we could take that
Everything
discussion up.
with the exception of the term.
Right.
I'll make that motion.
Okay, so now we're back to the original, adopting just the changes that were proposed tonight, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Anybody want to speak to that in the audience? All those in favor of that motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. And motion carried.
All right, so now we would either need a motion to table, or we would need a motion to adopt with whatever alternate term was being proposed.
And I'll make the motion that we adopt this with the 2010 option.
I will second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to adopt it with the 2010. Further discussion?
Is that contingent upon the rodeo committee agreeing to it? Well, one guy said.
They don't have to sign the contract, and it doesn't go into effect, so. Okay. Anybody in the audience wish to speak to this part of it? Mr. Skimmons?
Once again, as he's walking up here, I am going to vote no against this, but letting everybody know I am not against the rodeo. I'm a big advocate of rodeo. I just don't like the details that are underlined as now, but I'm looking forward to moving forward with them.
Thank you, Mayor and members of the council. And thank you for your thoughts, Councilman. The committee has authorized me to negotiate this matter, and so the matter in its current form is acceptable, and I'm authorized to sign it under these terms once we've got them ironed out. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Well, that just changed my no vote, because making sure that you were comfortable with it. So now that you've given us that information, Jim, I'm going to be in favor of this, of the amendment.
Anybody else in the audience wish to speak to this? Okay, all those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay.
No.
Motion carried. Hearing an action to approve resolution R 2021-60, collection of special assessments for construction projects in 2020. John, the other Mr.
Younger? No, I don't know if I'm younger. I'm probably older. At this time, we'll hold our annual collection hearing for projects, including sidewalk construction projects, nuisances, and building demolition work that was done in 2020. We'll start with just some basics that we usually go through every year, but the sidewalk projects, that'll be split up into 5 annual installments for a period of 5 years. All these assessments will be at an 8% interest rate. Construction projects, the alley project we did and Sam Street, the street project, will be 10-year annual installments. And it also included in that is the building and demolition project that we worked on. And then nuisances will be for one payment for 1 year. If anything that's under $100 are a payment of 1 year. Once again, the interest rate will be 8%. We've already sent out notices to everybody that was affected. The finance office will send out their notices that'll have the split out of the yearly payments. And starting tomorrow, September 21st, they'll have 30 days of interest-free until October 20th. After October 20th, then that's when their interest will start. So at this time, is there anyone in the audience that's got a question about their collection hearing? Okay, does council got any questions?
And you covered the building and sidewalk as 5 and the building as 10. What is the nuisance abatement?
Nuisance abatement is mowing?
No,
is
spread
1
out?
year. Is
Just 1 year?
Yep. So basically 1 year, 1 installment. So if they don't pay it in this 30 days, it'll go to the county next year. It'll go to the county this year. On November 1st, and then it'll go on their taxes for the one payment will be added to their taxes. Okay. If there's no other questions, we could go into the resolution. So as part of the resolution, we went through all the interests and how they're divided. The total of the sidewalk projects was a total of $35,370.28. Construction projects were $75,370.20. Building demolition was $14,117.06. And nuisance was $21,485.47, to a total of $146,303.01.
Terry, is there a map of, for example, the construction projects that?
I don't have a map, but the areas that we did was the alley on the west side of Main Street between 2nd and 3rd, and Sam Street.
Okay, thanks.
Any questions? Thank you.
Okay, entertain a motion.
Move approval of the resolution.
Motion by Mr. Starks. Second. And by Mr. Rice, further discussion. Anybody in the audience wish to address this? All in favor of the motion, signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carried. Hearing an action to approve resolution R 2021-61, tax levies to be certified by county auditor. Mr. Jennings.
I'm going to go ahead and speak to this. This year.
He was walking behind you. I thought he was coming.
Oh, sorry.
Lucky you.
The city council passed an ordinance in 2021 that changed the timelines for the 2022 and moving forward all annual appropriation budgets. We will be holding our hearings on the annual appropriation budget in November. However, this action needs to still be taken by the deadlines established in state law in order to certify the property taxes that will be included as part of the 2022 annual budget. I think the ordinance basically explains that for you. You can see the amount to be certified to the county auditor is $5,708,494. Michelle has included a copy of the property tax data from previous years. For 2022, the CPI was 1.2% and the growth was 1.31%. So pretty low on both of those, even in comparison to some pretty low years the last couple of years. One comment I guess that we have made is I got to think how far out, either next year or the year after, you'll probably see a jump in growth because we've had several TIF districts that have dissolved in the last year to a year and a half. So it takes a little bit for them to hit the right tax assessment year, but you'll see that come up a little bit. And I can answer any questions that council may have.
So you're looking at our mill levy of only going up about 4.5 cents? I believe on that last screen you had. Yep.
Yeah, you can see in 2021 it was $5.70, 70.6 cents, and 2022 would be $5.75.8. So yep, it went about 5 cents up.
5 points.
Good.
How confident are you in the 5,708,464 or 494 number?
I feel really good about it. We're far enough into the budget to see sales tax is still looking really good. I think you guys will see that next year. The mayor has had his meetings with all the departments internally, and we have a structurally balanced budget to propose to council, and that includes both CPI and growth included as part of the revenue projection. So I feel pretty confident about it at this point. And just for the general public's information, in case this is the first time they've heard about the change, depending on where we end this year, council can still always make a change next year on what you decide to do with property tax collections, but it is, the later timeline is giving us a much better ability to project how many projects we're actually going to get done and what our revenue actually looks like for next year. So you're going to have a much easier process this year.
Further discussion?
Move to approve.
Motion by Mr. Allen. Second by Mr. McCardle. Further discussion? Is there anybody in the audience who wishes to address this? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carried. Action to approve resolution R 2021-62, plat of Lot 3 of Murky's Addition, an addition in the south half of the southeast quarter of Section 11, Township 102 North, Range 60 West of the 5th Prime Meridian, Davis County, South Dakota, as requested by Mr. Rick Bruner.
Mayor and Council, City or Planning Commission recommended approval of this 6-0 with one absent. This is outside the city's zoning jurisdiction, but it's within the 3 miles of the city limits. County Planning Commission recommended approval, and I believe County Commission is approving this tomorrow. There were no concerns from Planning Commission at all with it.
Move to approve.
Motion by Mr. McCardle. Second. Second by Mr. Smith. Further discussion? Anybody in the audience wish to address this? Those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carried. Action to approve resolution R 2021-63, plat of Lot 2, Block 1 of Westwood First Edition, City of Mitchell, Davis County, South Dakota, as requested by CJM Consulting, Inc. Mr. Jennings.
Planning Commission recommended approval of this 6-0 with one absent, with the condition of an elevation certificate be provided. That has been provided to us already, so we have that. There was no concerns from any of the council about that. Actually, it's floor to ceiling that it's going to be purchasing that property. The applicant is here if you have any questions for them at all.
Motion by Mr. Rice, second by Mr. Barrington. Further discussion? Anybody in the audience wish to address this? Those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carried. Action to approve resolution R 2021-64, surplus property between 109 and 115 North Main Street. Mr. Johnson.
So this would be the first step that we need to take under state law in order to sell this property. Stephanie, if you want to pull up the map. You can see the area that we'd be discussing here. It's currently being used as parking lot. So the surplus, the resolution would declare that lot surplus. The next step would be for the city to do an appraisal, and then the resolution states that we would list this with a broker and bring back an acceptable offer that the council would act on at a future meeting.
Just for your information, we were approached by, this is the parking lot that is immediately north of the Old American Legion, which is now Jade's, I believe. We were approached by Jade's. They have an interest in the property. That's what led us to wanting to surplus it. They would like to turn it into part of their property and a patio and some other things. She has some ideas for what she would like to do to incorporate it into her business, that being Jade's Bar. She's also, I think, discussing the McPeak property, which is immediately north of that, but I don't know that for certain. So it would be a nice addition to put it back on the tax rolls and let them use it versus the city owning it as a parking lot.
And a point of reference, we, obviously, the Veterans Park is to the south of there, and then we purchased those buildings then to the west up there and turned that into public parking.
Correct. Immediately west of this building, we have a large public parking lot, and across the street, we have another one which would be immediately east of Zesto and north of the public safety building. We have another city parking lot.
Correct.
And on the other side of the Zesto, we have the James Valley Community Center as well as another public park.
Right. So the point is obviously you're pointing out, Mayor, is the fact that we've got a lot of public parking in that area, and therefore, anytime we can get some property back on tax rolls, I think it's to everyone's advantage.
I would agree. Motion by Mr. McCardle. Second by Mr. Rice. Further discussion? Is there anybody in the audience who wishes to address this? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carried. Okay, the big item on the show tonight, Mr. Peterson's waiting for it. Hearing an action to approve Resolution R 2021-65, providing for the creation of a City of Mitchell Tax Increment District Number 26. Yeah, I guess you're going to start it off.
I'm going to be the briefest one out of everybody for this one. Planning Commission recommended approval 4-0 with 3 abstaining to set the boundaries for TIF 26 and approve and recommended approval of the plan for TIF number 26. Since he is here, I will let him take over.
You gotta earn your supper tonight.
If I go long enough, will nobody oppose, right?
Obviously.
Can we wear you out and then you won't oppose? Good evening. My name's Don Peterson. I'm an attorney and I represent the developer in this proposed tax incremental financing district, that being the Mitchell Area Development Corporation. All of you in your packets, I think, have seen the tax increment district project plan. The good news is that we submitted a copy of this proposed plan to the Department of Revenue last week, and they did give their preliminary approval as a economic development TIF. So, good deal. We've also had some really good work by Stephanie and Justin in helping draft this project plan, and as a result of their input, I think, and I'll let Justin and Stephanie follow up on that, but they believe that this plan, or this project, if implemented by the city, will not count against the taxing authority. It won't be against the tax, the bonding capacity for the city. So that's a good news too. So this is a project for the Mitchell Main Street Core Business District. It involves two different areas. It involves the Western Building, which all of you guys are certainly familiar with and know what you've done for that project. The Development Corporation has entered into a development agreement with John and Diane Adamo to act as developers. It's their intent to work on the Western Building, keep it as a historic tax, keep its historical value, turn the main floor into commercial, use that for commercial, maybe a restaurant and commercial. Floors 2 through 4 will then be developed into single bedroom apartments. The Mitchell Area Development Corporation owns the lots directly to the north, and they're all vacant now. They used to all contain nuisance properties, or at least a couple nuisance properties, and then other properties had to be taken down in order to facilitate the nuisances. The Development Corporation would transfer that property to Mr. Adamo and his wife, and a portion of that would be used for private parking for the patrons of the commercial business that would be located there, and also parking for the residents of the apartments. They're also planning on putting some parking garages for the residents on a portion of that property. And they also believe that there will be enough left over for a second commercial building if and when that would be developed. So for purposes of our project plan, we are including the redevelopment of the Western Building at a cost. They're estimating that their cost will be about $1.8 million to $2 million that they'll put into that building. For our TIF purposes, because we all know that if we construct a building at $2 million, it might be assessed for $2 million, but if we remodel a building for $2 million, it may not be assessed at that much. So to be conservative, we have estimated that the tax assessed value of the Western Building, when completed, will be approximately $1.5 million. The parking, a lot across the street, they believe will be at a cost of about $250,000. They believe the garages will come in at about $550,000, so that pushes that to $800,000. And then the second commercial building, we've just estimated at $1.5 million. So those are the numbers that we use for the project plan. Danny, you still with me?
I'm still here.
Page 7 of the project plan then shows the outline area and has the legal descriptions for it. One of the things we have to establish for a project plan is that the base property in there fits within the statutory definitions or requirements. So it can't exceed 10% of the assessed value. And on page 8, we have a table that Stephanie worked with me very carefully with, and so we've got the existing TIFs and their certified base values. TIF 26 would be the new TIF. Its current value is at $45,000, but so we show that we're well within that 10% certified values of TIFs for the overall certified value, so we're good there. The amount of the TIF, we are asking for of amount of up to $1,200,000, and that's for to be used for eligible TIF expenses in the western building and with the parking lot and the garages and the infrastructure for those across the street. We're asking that to be set up as a grant, which is the kind of the new way that we've been doing TIFs. That's an allowed way under South Dakota law, and so we're asking that to be classified as a TIF or as a grant. That also helps keep it off the rolls for the city. We will enter into a development agreement, not only with the city. MADC will enter into a development agreement with the city, setting forth terms that are required to be done so in a TIF. Those terms would include that the total amount of the TIF will not exceed $1.2 million. There won't be an interest rate associated with this TIF. We're asking that the TIF be for 20 years. And that's the maximum that can be allowed, or once the $1.2 million is recovered in taxes. The developer has indicated, or Mr. Adamo's indicated, this project can't go forward without a TIF. He's putting in, as I said, at least $1.5 million of his own money into this, and then is hoping for the TIF to produce about, of the $1.2 million, we've said that his TIF amount cannot exceed $600,000 or the amount of money that he would put into the building. If it was less than that, then it could be less than that. The other $600,000 would be then used to reimburse the development corporation for costs and expenses they would have with it. Plus, it's conceivable, again, this $1.2 million is based on the western building coming in at about $1.5 million, the parking in the garages, and we're sure those things are going to happen. It's also conditioned upon that second commercial building coming in, and there's not somebody right now waiting in the wings to say, yes, we'll develop that. So for our project plan, we've set out that may happen in around 2024. We're giving it some years. It wouldn't come online until 2026 for tax purposes. Hopefully it does. But if it doesn't, we would generate enough in the TIF to get Mr. Adamo the money that we said we would try to get him. Get back to the schedule. So again, we're asking for a TIF award in the amount of $1.2 million. On page 19, it sets forth the specific items that can be included in project costs. Schedule 2 is an economic feasibility study. That's basically what that's trying to say is, will there be enough increment generated from the TIF funds to pay for the improvements to the project? And if you look at, we'll get there in a second. One of the things that's kind of good to look at is what's going to happen in the TIF. And if you look, starting at page 21, that's an exhibit that was submitted to the Historic Preservation Society in South Dakota of all the improvements or all the things that will be done in that building and still maintain its historic attributes. The developer is working with Brad Civarella on that part of the project, and Larry Jerza is the architect for the building. So when we look at the tables for the tax increment, again, we're projecting that the western building would be assessed for tax purposes at about $1.5 million. Mr. Adamo is using some funds from a 1031 exchange, real estate exchange, which means to put into the Western Building, which means that those funds have to be spent within 180 days of his closing on the sale of his building. So this is on a real fast track. And he hopes to get started this fall. And then be completed early next year, or early next summer, June, July, with that building. So we show Increment starting, the building be assessed probably in year 2022, for 2023, payable in 2024, and then the taxes start the following year.
Can I just ask for clarification?
Yes.
So you're saying the total renovations will be more than the 1.5?
Yes, yeah, they'll for sure be.
Okay,
yeah.
that's what I just was like, gosh, that doesn't, okay.
No, they'll be closer to $2 million than $1.5 million. And then the developer, Mr. Adamo, is saying that the parking and the garages should then be done shortly thereafter, hopefully in 2022 as well. And then finally, for that second second commercial building, we're looking at that to be done maybe in 2024, or assessed in 2024 for the 2025 tax year, payable in 26. There's a Schedule 3 is required by law, or by statute, that's an economic development study, which just again shows that it's feasible for this project to go forward. Hopefully what it'll do, it'll keep the progress that's going off Main Street. It's good to see the project you just talked about before, someone adding on and getting some of the vacant lots taken off Main Street. We hope that this can kickstart it. We believe that on page 39, the fiscal impact statement, we believe that the property, if it's fully developed, will have improvements, which are now taxed at or assessed at about $45,000, to take that to $3,499,000, about $3,500,000. Starting with attachment, I guess attachment 2 is a picture of the TIF area as it currently exists with the Western Building and then the vacant about 3/4 of a block. Attachment 3 are the building plans, or at least the outline of those for the 4 floors of the Western Building. And then the last attachment, the last requirement for a project plan is the zoning change map. It's the property's all zoned properly, so there's no zoning changes that have to be included. We have included from Main Street and 3rd to 5th. Is that right, Justin? Yeah. Yeah, and there's some streetscape projects in that area, and so if we can fit those into the TIF, that's the purpose for including the right-of-ways in that as well. Questions? Justin and Stephanie, do you have anything you want to add, about the?
I guess the only thing that I would add is our internal committee reviewed the application and it met the criteria that we look for in our new TIF guidelines where, like Don said, it's required to meet the economic development classification. He's already got that preliminary approval from the state. Again, we did it as a positive increment grant pass-through, so there's no funds received until that increment is actually generated, which is how we've done the last 2 TIFs as well. They are, one item I didn't hear Don mention, but it's in the plan. They are required to waive the discretionary formula. And that's just to ensure that all of that increment's being generated to pay off that commitment versus waiving that. And we don't have the capitalized interest. So the concerns that had been brought up previously by council are all addressed in our new guidelines, and they're all included as part of the plan. I think that's the only comments I had. I did give council just a brief update on your TIFs as a whole. That's included in your packet, and you can see that they have resulted in quite a bit of increment development within the community. So that's $69 million worth of investment in the community spurred by those TIFs. And some of those I don't have the beginning, base, and current values for because they're on reports that were no longer on the state's website. That was before I got here. But the ones that I know of, I mean, that's quite a bit of increment generated by this, using this kind of incentive program for the city. It's one of the only economic development tools that we have access to.
I can attest that you can't get anything by Stephanie or Justin.
Any concerns at all with the expenses qualifying for this particular project? And so as far as the amount that's generated, they'll be able to utilize through the TIF? Right?
Yes, that's why we sent the project plan into the Department of Revenue, to let them review that, and yeah, there won't be any issue with that. There's plenty of expense that will qualify for that.
And I think
I'll let you go first.
I was going to say, especially because a lot of their costs that they're going to have involved with this are in some of the public spaces that they're trying to improve for just the usability of the building. So I really don't think they're going to have any problem having those expenses qualify.
For the city's purposes, it's all the same to us. It's every part of our portion is considered the grant. So it's up to MEDC to make sure that they're submitting eligible costs under that grant to be reimbursed through for the TIF funds. So I don't think that there would be any issue with the amount of improvements that they would need to make. I think that there's going to be plenty of work that would be eligible. So the only other aspect of that is that if there is a shortfall in actually receiving the revenue, that risk is on the developer. So if it doesn't end up generating the increment that is proposed here, it's not going to pay off early, but we're not going to be responsible for any shortfall. That risk falls on the developer.
And that's largely just due to the change in the way we've been issuing those increment grants the last 3 TIFs, just to ensure that, it's paid as it's generated.
And that's a major portion of why it would not count as your constitutional debt.
And MADC is part of this transaction and part of this 1031 exchange. There'll be a single purpose entity set up. And Mr. Damo's 1031 funds will flow into that, and then that entity will basically make all the improvements, will pay for all the improvements from those funds, and so we'll have all that stuff documented that we can give to the city, so that they can go through and look at what the expenses are in there.
I guess 2 other things. One thing that we can say for certain is the development or the developer would not be interested without the TIF. So we do know that it really does meet that but-for test. That kind of investment into an older building on Main Street, I don't know if we're going to see that happen any other way. And then just the second item, we do have the ability to look at other improvements across the street to the north after they get through where they're doing the parking in the garages and the other potential development. So I think it's going to be a positive for the city as a whole. Lastly, the reason, just for general information in case someone's listening, the reason why we want those certified as economic development is then we know it won't be a local TIF that is spread to make up the difference in the school tax. So we've always tried to only approve those TIFs that will be certified as economic development. That way, that difference is made up in a rounding up or statewide. So we don't have to make up that difference here locally.
And one other thing, I guess, to keep in mind is we'll still be bringing back a developer's agreement for a future council meeting that would have more of those details on how those grant funds would be distributed and have more detail on that front.
Right. We have a development agreement with the developer, so he's committed. There'll be a development agreement between the city and MADC, and then there'll be another development agreement between MADC and Mr. Adamo for how the funds will be distributed out to him.
So this is the last step, and once we pass this resolution, then it's all systems are go?
Right.
And I would like to move approval of the resolution R 2021-65.
Okay, motion by Mrs. Jerks. Second. Second by Mr. Rice. Further discussion?
I'll just say quickly that the resolution itself does have all of the legal findings that the council would have to make included. It sets the boundaries as are included in the project plan. It references a couple of different sections of state law, which we've spent the last, 20 minutes or so all discussing and walking through. I will let you know that, as Stephanie said, the TIF review team reviewed that. We believe that all of those are met, all the statutory requirements are met, so just wanted to point that out.
Mr. Peterson, you're getting a lot faster at this.
It's because Danny makes me. I reminded, I'm embarrassed Jerry Beck, but Jerry used to be on the council, and Danny was over here, and I came up for a TIF, and Danny said, if I make a motion to approve it right now, will you just sit down? and Jerry said, no, by law, he has to go through it, we have to listen.
And now she's sitting down there, though.
Yeah.
Okay, any other discussion? Anybody in the audience wish to address this? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carried.
Thank you.
Okay, we're down to item 27, first reading on ordinance O 2021-12, rezoning of East 71 feet of Lot 5 and Lot 6. Block 18 of Van Epps, first edition, City of Mitchell, Davis County, South Dakota, from R3 medium density to HB highway business. Mr. Jennings.
This is the first reading of the ordinance. The second would be on October 4th. Planning Commission did recommend to deny 5-1 with 1 absent. Discussion during it, a couple of the board members didn't want to move into residential area with highway business. It is contiguous right across the street. You've got M&H, UPS. We did have one person who was opposed to it and also came in and spoke. Much traffic. They thought crime would go up in that area as well. The applicant would like to move a business there. This would be highway business, so the plan would have to go back in front of Planning Commission once they have, if this gets rezoned, once they have the plan, and go from there still. The applicant is here if you have any questions. It is just first reading of the ordinance.
715 there on the square is where you're talking about. Yep. There is a small house there that the applicant intends to tear down and build a new facility. Is that not right, Mr. Earl?
Yes, it is.
You want to go up and say anything?
Yes. This isn't as big a project as the Western Building, but Mayor and Council, I'm Jack Earl. My business is Oh My Carpet, LLC. And I've been, my son and myself, we've had about 70 years combination of floor covering, and it's time we have a building. I have a rental space for my warehouse, and it's full, and it's time to have a place of our own. And I purchased this property. It's got good visibility from Haven Street. It has an old house on there. It's kind of an eyesore that will be gone. We'll put a nice-sized building on there, following the city codes. I think there'll be, what I have in my mind, there'll be plenty of setbacks all the way around. It should be a nice building. Are there any questions?
Jack, I know that one of the concerns that were brought up at Planning and Zoning was the neighbor who was against it, and you said to me that you did speak with her.
I talked to the lady, yes. And she said she'd think about it, so, yeah.
think that that's noteworthy that you did go and make that contact, so.
We'd be good neighbors, you know. Yeah, we'll keep the place nice, so.
I think it'd be a good addition to the neighbors. I'll approve the first reading.
Motion approved by Mr. McCardle.
Second.
Second by Mr. Barrington. Further discussion?
I'd like to say something on this.
Come on up.
matter.
Sure.
Thank you.
My ex-wife was the one that came up here last time,
State your name, please.
Carl Knock. She's not able to attend tonight. I am, for her. I don't believe it's right for Mr. Earl to take perfectly good residential lots and turn them into a business lot in just one part of the block. That leaves precedence for, should this pass, that I could go to 7th and Capitol, purchase that lot, and get it changed, and then put whatever it is I want there. Just because he says it's going to be a carpet store, doesn't mean it's always going to be a carpet store. He'll retire someday it'll get sold. Something else will come back in there as a business. And I don't think you have much to say what kind of business goes back in there. It could be an ice cream shop, a candy store, whatever. But why should he take part of a residential area and turn it into a business when there's so much commercial property already out there that he could purchase and it'd be done? He'd be on his way instead of jumping through all these hoops to try and turn something into something he wants that'll never be able to come back to be residential. We just don't see it as being good for the neighborhood. I have nothing against Mr. Earl himself. I purchased a trailer house from him once. I just think this is a bad idea for the neighborhood. There's lots of places he could put his building without having much trouble at all. But I don't think he needs to destroy a neighborhood by putting a business. Doesn't matter if he builds the Taj Mahal there. It's the fact that he's changing it from residential to business. And once it's been changed, it's going to be even harder to get it to go back to residential should someone want to buy the property at some time and want to put a house back on it.
It just require rezoning like he's doing.
Well,
It's simple. You have to want to go through the motions, but, okay.
it's a lot easier. There's lots of places already to put this stuff. That's what you guys have done before. I made the industrial park for these reasons and not destroy a neighborhood. That's all we have to say.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else wish to speak to this?
Can I say one more thing?
No.
Sure. Come up.
Okay, thank you.
Because you're going over the.
Okay, sure, of course. Obviously, I'm getting old, but when I'm done, my son is ready to take over. And tonight, he started my grandson working with him. So it should be a business that's going to be in our family for a long time. So I just wanted to say that. It's not going to be sold. Thank you.
Yeah, it's only first reading.
I'll move approval on first reading.
We've already got approval.
Oh, you already have that.
Yep. Nope, just discussion. Go ahead, Mr. Mayor.
Just want to make that statement that it is just first reading. In the past, the due diligence has always been give first reading, we can always see what happens at second reading, so, and that favor might change or not. So I think it's worthy to give an additional 2 weeks and see where it goes.
Okay. Further discussion?
The only thing I was going to mention is the list that we have of neighbors, there's 16 of them on there, and as far as what we've received so far is just one letter back. At least that was in the packet.
Correct. Further discussion? Hearing none, ready to vote. All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries on first reading. Second reading will be in 2 weeks. First reading on ordinance 020-2113, emergency ordinance amending regulations on medical cannabis. Mr. Johnson.
Sick of me yet? I'll try to keep it brief. A majority of this is some cleanup language to try to make things fit better with the proposed rules that the state is scheduled to adopt here in early October. So if you want to start working through those sections, the first section is just an additional application requirement for when they submit with us. We're going to also require them to supply any information that they'll be supplying to the state for the state certification process. Moving on to section 2, as if we go through our process, we kind of give them the provisional approval, and then they work their way through the state certification and end up having to make some kind of change to their application materials at that level, or there's something that they have to alter in their plans. Really all that this section is saying is if they have to make a change like that, that might be a substantial change, they have to bring that information back to us for the council to reconsider before their license would fully go into effect. So, moving on then to section 3. What this section is trying to do is require an applicant to go through our process first before they would go through the state certification process, or at the very least require them to do that simultaneously. What we don't want to happen is for somebody to go through the state program, get on a waiting list over there, but then not be able to get a license through us. That's not going to do anybody any good. So this is going to require them to go through our program first. One of the requirements at the state level is that they've complied with all the local ordinances relating to it. So what we would do is we would not certify that they've complied until they've actually gone through our process. Moving on to the next section, we've got some additional language regarding fees. Basically what we're doing there is clarifying that they're due at the time of the application, is requested, that they're not refundable. And we're also adding the ability to not only change the fee amounts, but allow the council to add fees or delete fees, make more alterations in the future by resolution, so that it does not require the ordinance change to come back and establish something new or make additional modifications there. For the next section, and this kind of works in conjunction with, oh, I see I've got some typos on the section. Got my sections misnumbered there. I'll clean that up before we send it off. But so listed there as section 5, we'd be removing language from this section dealing with dispensaries. It currently says that no cannabis dispensary may share a physical location with any other type of business or land use type. And we're really just moving that language and moving it down to the following section where we're revising those to be more consistent with the state regulations. The state will allow those types of businesses, the dispensaries, the cultivation, and the manufacturing, to share a physical location and co-locate at one site under certain circumstances. So we're changing the way that we had originally proposed it to allow for what the state is allowing there. The testing facilities, they do need to be independent. And then we're also saying that they may not share a physical location with any other type of non-cannabis business. So you couldn't have a dispensary in a bar or manufacturing facility and, any other type of business or land use. All of those, they need to be self-contained and can't be sharing with other types of businesses. Our previous version was similar to that, but the way that it would be structured under this change is more consistent with the proposed state rules. The next section there, this would be language that allows, I should say now that currently we don't have the ability to prohibit all cannabis establishments. We could prohibit certain types, but we could not fully prohibit dispensaries. So what this will do is if the state does in the future give the city the ability to prohibit all cannabis establishments, it would allow the city council to consider whether we want to exercise that authority to ban all of the cannabis types, cannabis establishment types. And if we did exercise that authority at that time, the existing licenses would just cease to exist. Section after that, there are certain reports and documentation that the cannabis establishments need to report to the state. This would require them to send us a copy of whatever it is they're sending off to the state. And that would be simultaneous with whenever they report it to the state. And the last real section there just clarifies that all of the regulations that we've adopted so far relate only to medical cannabis. Any licenses that we're issuing here aren't going to be any kind of a shoe-in. Should recreational become legal in the future, there would be separate ordinance chapter that would be adopted to deal with those. So just because somebody's getting a medical license does not mean that they're going to be able to do recreational in the future. And that really covers all of the proposed changes. So I'll open it up for questions, comments. One other thing to note is that due to the short time frame between now and when the proposed rules from the state would be put into effect, we're going to have to use the emergency adoption procedures. It does still require 2 readings, but it would go into effect immediately upon publication. And it's really necessary to use that here because we would be accepting applications as soon as those state rules are published. So if those are adopted and put into place on October 4th, as the state is anticipating, then we would be accepting applications at that time. And if we had to wait through the entire process, we'd be having people apply when our new rules technically have not gone into effect yet. So with that,
Justin, so to apply, they have to apply through the state first, don't they, or
no, so we're setting it up so that they apply through us first.
us first?
Or they can apply simultaneously too, but they can apply for through the state first and then come to us.
And we're still giving only 5 of them out, right?
For the dispensaries, yes, we're not changing anything on the cap. That would still be capped at 5.
So is that a first come, first serve, or is it a lottery system, or what?
No, we did set out procedures for that when we did our earlier regulations, and it's more of a lottery system. So I think we put out a notice of when we're going to be accepting applications, and We accept them for a certain period. We go through, we do a quick run-through to make sure that applications do or do not meet the requirements. If they don't, those ones are thrown out. The remaining ones go on to the next stage in the process. They get put into that lottery. You draw the order that you're going to consider those, and then they come to the council to be considered in that order. So,
Thank you.
More questions? Again, this is first reading.
I'll have those section numbers cleaned up by the time it comes back.
Move to place on first reading.
Motion by Mr. Allen.
Second.
Second by Mr. Rice. Further discussion? Anybody in the audience wish to address this? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carried. Okay, those sitting patiently in the back, Mr. Canary, presentation on the master plan for the golf course.
Mr. Mayor and Council, Jason Ganeri, Golf and Cemetery. This master plan project started as the golf board wanted to do certain projects and they wanted to prioritize everything. So through that, they wanted a plan for the future. And through that process, they decided to hire Kevin Norby out of Chaska, Minnesota. He is a golf course architect to develop a master plan for us. Some of the key points that the golf board and myself wanted to see implemented in this master plan was, number one, to make the course more playable for all levels of golfers. At the same time, making it more challenging for the better golfers. In that, Lakeview Golf Course is one of the longest, there's maybe one longer in the state for the forward tees. Right now we're at 5,688 yards. Through this process on the master plan that we got, we have shortened that up to 4,600 yards, making it more playable for all levels. With that, the red tees are historically known as women's tees. Golf courses have been going away from that to be forward tees, so you're playing more to your ability. If you're a beginner golfer or a gentleman that doesn't hit the ball as far, you play to your ability. With that shortening of the tees, leveling of existing tees, reconstruct existing bunkers, adding bunkers, while keeping maintenance at a reasonable level for them. Reconstruct and level problem greens like number 8, 9, 11, 12, and 18. Improve the practice facility, drainage issues, tree issues. Are some of the things that were kind of set out before this process even started. Then through this process, after Mr. Norby was hired, went through a couple site visits, a couple of public input sessions. There was a survey put out. And through that, Mr. Norby came up with some plans that we didn't really think about. Some rerouting, some holes, some different things, like on 7, 8, 11, 13, 14, and 15, changing those holes up. He also added a short course in, Revamp driving range concept, Himalayan putting course, where it's kind of basically a short putting course where you have different avenues and little nooks and crannies to putt to. So through this process, the golf course wants to encourage new golfers, existing golfers. There's been, we've had a very, very good year, and we'd like to continue with that. One of the benefits of COVID, we've seen kind of a surge. Like I said, new golfers, people that haven't golfed for a long time are coming back to the game. So we've seen a very, very good year. 593 members this year. Not to the high number of members, but looking at revenue-wise, more than likely gonna beat what our previous high is. Going back to Mr. Norby, he did the total revamp of Elmwood Golf Course. Some of you have played that. A bunch of work up at Cattail Crossings up in Watertown. Revamped Baker's Crossing in Hartford. So I guess that's just kind of a generalize. This is more of informational for you to ask questions. This is maybe the first time some of you have seen this. It's an ambitious project, but I think it's as I said, to keep the wave of new golfers and keep the energy going. The golf board and myself would like to see this move forward. We asked for the first phase of this project is what we asked for this year. And in that, we'll work on some tree work, some preliminary work for different stages. We'll work on some tee boxes and stuff like that.
Jason, I have a couple of questions. Yep. So it looks, you've got this divided into 8 phases. Mm-hmm. How long do you anticipate all 8? I mean, if you were dreaming big, what would your projection be on how long you'd go?
It all depends on how much money you want to throw at it. And the other part of that is you got to balance closing part of the golf course. Sure. So the way this is set up is each phase is going to kind of piggyback on the next phase. It's prepping a little bit for the next phase. So if it all gets stretched out, it very easily could be 10 years.
Is it stuff, and is any of it things that can be done during the winter?
The tree removal, some of the dirt work, hauling it in. If the one pond is going to be built, that very easily could be done during the winter. So yes, there are parts. And there are parts that we couldn't necessarily do in-house. If we go full bore on this, it would be very hard for us to do full phases in a year. So it's more than likely would be contractors being brought in.
And I looked and looked and looked to see phase 1, and then I realized I think it's a path. Is that right? What phase 1 is? The path that goes around? Is that what?
No, phase 1 is.
Where's that color?
It's basic. Phase 1 is more or less tree removal of. Okay. So there's damaged trees, diseased trees, trees that are causing damage to cart paths, ones that shade greens too much, tee boxes too much, ones that are in straight rows that don't really serve any purpose. So we'll take out certain trees to make the other trees better, and on and on. I mean, it's kind of ongoing.
Mr. Nordby did an inventory of the trees and identified areas where they impacted cart paths, impacted the growth of grass on tee boxes and greens. Also where basically 1 or 2 or 3, and Jason talked about trees all in a row, are too close together and doesn't promote the growth of any of the trees. So, you know, if 1 tree was there, it would probably be very big and healthy, but with 5 trees there, they're all dying. Mm-hmm. So identified those areas to look at, to update those initially. And then I think the other thing, the pump house cooling fan and update so we don't blow motors.
Yeah.
That type of stuff.
And with that, I mean, I've already gone through here a couple weeks ago and marked trees that are dying, or I don't think that are going to make it into next year. Ones that have really bad crotches that are going to more than likely fail in a storm.
And so we've done some of our own tree removal in the past, but this part of the request is we'll still have labor to do some, but there needs to be labor to hire to have as many as we need done, pulled out at one time, so that, and maybe the next year it doesn't proceed in the type we want, but that's the first step in order for any of the other steps to proceed, because there might be cart paths that are then rerouted. Part of the reshaping of the holes is dependent on some of the tree removal and those types of things.
Yep.
So I'm glad that's first step is in there, and we'll talk about that probably during the budget time.
Yep.
And part of and Jason mentioned it, but we did hold 2 public meetings, advertised on the radio and newspaper, et cetera. We had 4 or 5 outside people show up. Mostly golfers, part of the girls' golf team at the time. A couple golf coaches, past coaches showed up, just wanting to know what we were thinking. The preservation of the course, the state views us as a good entity, and we have some state tournaments that are here. But I think we need to maintain that. We need to upgrade and make sure we're falling behind, that we address at some point to, I guess, keep up with the changes of golf. And he talked about the forward tees, and it was kind of an eye-opener that, and I can't remember what other course, but
it was only
one other course in the state, and is longer from what I'll call the women's tees or the forward tees. Some courses have 18 holes, and it's just barely 4,000 yards.
And me personally, I don't hit from up there, but I think that's almost too short.
Right, but
from my viewpoint, but I don't hit from up there.
A 12-year-old that only can hit the ball 150 yards maximum, I have a chance to hit a drive and hit the green. Where today, a child or somebody that only hits the ball 150 yards has no chance to reach any of the holes in 2 or in 3 on a par 5. And I will say there are some ambitious ideas in the plan, but if we don't make the plan and put it out there, we'll never make any progress. So I'm glad that this came up. There's to me, some exciting things that can be done out there and improve the play, improve the playability, and improve the pace of play.
Yep. And the first couple phases are 3 to 4, possibly the 5th phase, are definitely the highest priority, is what is a consensus, what we'd like to see, where we'd like to see it go to. But like you said, there needs to be a little bit of a commitment on the city side, not necessarily, hey, we're going to spend this amount of money, but in theory that you agree with the direction we're going. And like I said, this is all, tonight is all informational. I'm not asking for that tonight, but for us to go forward on this plan, there needs to be a little bit of backing so that we know which direction to go. So.
Just curious, do we include phase 1 into the proposed draft for the budget? Is that included in there?
There are some items in there.
It is included as a request, however, that fund is going to require almost, what was it, $80,000 from general fund next year because it's not cash flowing as part of that too. So there's conversations to have.
The fan, it was broken up a little more than what phase one shows here. The fans, I think. I don't remember. You're going to see it next week.
And-
Obviously, when budget came in, we were still 600,000 over. So we had to whittle down things. I'll tell you, every department we got stuff cut out of it. So.
And we did not include any of the repayment of the golf carts either. So.
Are there new golf carts in now?
No.
No. My last conversation with the supplier, they're still on tap to be in this fall. It's a parts thing. So.
It is, and that, right now, a lot of mechanical equipment has delivery issues.
Yeah.
Due to chips and whatever else.
Well, at least you got another year out of the old ones.
Yeah, it's not all a bad thing. So.
I don't golf a ton, but when I go out there, Jason, that course for a municipal course is one of the nicest around. And it's just in gorgeous shape this year, and I know there's been a lot of play because I live out in that area. And it's, even though it's top-notch now, if we don't pay attention to what future projects, it'll slowly go back into the pack and maybe even be below average. So I like this plan. I think it's pretty ambitious, but in reality, if we don't keep investing into a jewel like we have, it's just going to become another golf course. And I like what you guys are doing and kind of look forward to seeing it progress.
Thank you.
Yes, you are. I am getting a lot of nice compliments about the golf course. Thank you for that.
You're welcome, and thank you. Could I just say, as far as the help I've received this year, all the way from full-time staff to part-time staff, and that includes Mr. Heeb, I just want to say thank you to all of them. So.
Anything else, Mr. Canary? We're adjourned.
Thank you.
Or did you want to say something?
Yeah, we can put it on there. Yep. It's been at the clubhouse